Dr. Bob Larson, what is the difference between and how can we differentiate between disorders and demons? And is every disorder a demon? Or are there some disorders that are just mental and they need medical treatment? Could you give us a little bit more explanation before we talk about different disorders? What are the differences between disorders and demons?
That's a broad landscape. So let's start with the fact that any disorder psychologically, any disordered condition can be either demonically created and energized, or it can be capitalized upon because of a pre-existing psychological condition. And the fine line is asking the right questions to see whether or not the person who is coming for ministry uh, has this condition because of something that appears to be endemic neurologically, perhaps metabolically. There could be all sorts of things in the body that are not in balance, hormones, um, different aspects of the thyroid or the pineal gland. All these things can affect a person's homeostatic condition. So you may not be a medical doctor, you may not have a deep knowledge of psychology, but you certainly can ask questions. How long has this person been this way?
Mm-hmm.
What was it that triggered this? That's one of the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
I like to usually say to people, well, have they always been like this? Or was there a certain time? Was there a traumatic incident or some life event
Mm-hmm.
that caused them to shift their mental outlook? What we're looking for is to see to what extent this is medically treatable. It does need some kind of medication, and fortunately, medical science can come up with some excellent drugs that do help with psychoses and various forms of mental instability. Now, very often there's a demon there you still have to root out, but sometimes you can't get to the demon until you get the person mentally stabilized.
Mm-hmm.
Not one answer fits all. We need to approach this very, very carefully and ask a lot of questions. This is not a situation where you jump in and just lay hands on somebody and start casting out a demon. That is extremely dangerous. If the person, one of the first questions is, I ask,
Mm-hmm.
uh, if a person says my son's schizophrenic or says I'm schizophrenic or whatever
Mm-hmm.
they're saying about themselves, has that been medically certified? Have you seen a psychiatrist? Have you seen a psychologist? They signed off on that
Mm-hmm.
because many people
Mm-hmm.
diagnose, and some family members self-diagnose. They
Mm-hmm.
just make assumptions because this person is having crazy thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It just may be a demon. I know it sounds like a convoluted answer, but it's a convoluted situation.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to work your way through it gradually. I take these things very, very carefully. I study the person, I study their reactions, I watch their behavior, I see if it fits into one of the templates I've studied about various um, modalities of emotional expression that may indicate borderline or psychosis or delusional. Now, if somebody comes to me and says, believe me, people tell me these things, you know, um, the government has planted a chip in my head, and President Biden is monitoring my every thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I simply look at them and say, I honestly don't think you're important enough for the United States government to be concerned about what's going on in your mind. I don't mean to insult you,
Mm-hmm.
but let's have a reality check here. That's not true. Now, that's psychosis. Okay. When somebody says, I'm hearing voices, that's another matter. Are they dissociative aspects of alter multiple personalities speaking to each other in the mind? Are they demons? Are they aspects of consciousness that have lost touch with reality? That's where you need to take time to ask questions. Okay, what does the voice say? Who does it claim to be? Does it have a name? What is it trying to do? A simple rule to follow, though it's not 100% accurate, is this voice in the mind, this mental instability.
Mm-hmm.
Is it trying to destroy the person or somebody else? If it's trying to destroy them or somebody else, I'm more inclined to think that could be a demon.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
I'm pausing here. I'll keep going
No,
because
no, 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 no.
this is
That's
the time. It's hard to give a quick answer.
yeah, yeah. That's good. And we have actually, and guys, those of you who are watching,
Those of
this
you
is a
who are watching,
this is a very in-depth topic, and we have very soon we're gonna release an e-course where Dr. Bob Larson actually went through this, and we're gonna have below in the link his school that I would encourage every person to go through. I went through it. We encourage our team to go through, where he actually layer upon layer kind of goes through different mental illnesses and how to deal with them, and that now some people might hear that, Dr. Bob Larson, and they would say, well, Jesus didn't do that. He just cast out demons. There were a few instances where people had mental disorders. He drove out demons. Everything was fine. You guys are bringing a lot of the Western, view into this. This is totally not scriptural. How would you respond to that?
I think that's very easy to respond to. So, first of all, in the cultural context at the time, there was no development of terminology to describe conditions. So, verbally, there was no way for Jesus to explain to people what the condition was. We live in a post Freudian age, and we use these terms like conscious and subconscious and psychosis,
Mm-hmm.
etc. And these are all recently developed words in little more than 100 years. So that did not exist. The second thing is that the Bible, very often when Jesus cast out a demon, it says he healed them.
Mm-hmm.
He healed. So deliverance is also healing. And I believe many times he was actually healing mental conditions, like in the case of Legion.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, what we read in the Bible are anecdotal accounts where we have a limited description of a phenomenon that might have gone on for some time, and there might have been dialogue and conversation and all sorts of things happening. Jesus didn't always, I'm convinced, just walk up like that
Mm-hmm.
and do things. So we do have instances in which he went through several steps to get
Mm-hmm.
somebody healed and delivered.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's more than meets the eye
Yeah,
here.
that's very good.
The big thing is conceptually, there was the nomenclature to frame it did not exist. So the Bible says he healed them.
Mm-hmm.
But one more thing that's really important. First of all, the demons today have more curses longer lasting,
Mm-hmm.
and as we've just said, more devastating ways to destroy people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have meth in the time of Jesus. They didn't have opioids.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't smoking crack cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So those things now have multiplied the mental problems of people. Plus, back then, it was a very close knit, family oriented, nuclear culture society.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, there were people living on the edges of it, but not like what we've got today.
Mm-hmm.
So, the problems are multiplied today, and we need to adjust to the times and bring the deliverance and the healing of Christ as the Holy Spirit in a new age shows us how to do it.
Mm-hmm. So good, so good. I appreciate you highlighting that, because I'm noticing that a lot of people, they experience this revelation or this insight or the call of God to cast out demons, and they have really successful or effective deliverance ministries, and then they begin to look at every case, especially with autism, learning disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar, borderline bipolar, and then they would sometimes even like just cast out the demon, the person is still has the seizures right on the stage or in person. No, that's it. You're free. You're gone. And then they go as far as to begin to tell those people to stop taking medication. And the medication that was helpful to them, in not with the spiritual problem, with the physical problem that this person had. And I think that a lot of Christians, they don't think that the brain is a physical organ. They somehow think that the brain and the mind is the same. And we don't feel, I feel like there's so little education and knowledge, especially in the area of spiritual warfare. They go just all the way into deliverance, and then there's some people who are teaching on mental health so much that they ignore the supernatural component of deliverance and ministry of exorcism. What are the most common mental disorders that you have seen that deliverance ministers mistaken for demons?
Well, schizophrenia is right at the top, no question about it. It is the one condition that most closely aligns itself with what we know as demonization, and that is because it is a condition in which people lose touch with reality, and they develop psychosis, which basically means that their mind is not properly perceiving reality. So when people start hearing voices, or they hear voices telling them to do things that are absolutely absurd, uh, like kill somebody, or
Mm-hmm.
harm themselves,
Mm-hmm.
or cut themselves, or threaten suicide, it's very easy to jump to the conclusion, oh, that is a demon. Not necessarily. Demons do those things, and sometimes demons have created conditions and they just walk away. They go
Mm-hmm.
on to somebody else. And this poor person is left with a broken brain,
Mm-hmm.
a broken mind, broken emotions. And so now, in that brokenness, they are exhibiting characteristics of demons, but the demons aren't even there. It's just broken. It's like the devil comes up and he pushes you and you fall and you break your arm, and he goes on to somebody else. He's going to push somebody else over, but you still got a broken arm.
Mm-hmm.
We got to treat the broken arm. And a
That's good.
broken arm, as you put it so well, is like a broken brain. So when people talk about hallucinations, seeing things, hearing things, um, what I do when somebody is brought to me in a condition like this, I watch the body language. I watch the presence or absence of eye contact. You know, if somebody sits there for 30 minutes and cannot look at me, either a demon doesn't want them to look at me, or they are incapable of connecting with another human being because they're living so much in a private world of mental illness. I look for signs of restlessness. Now, demons can make a person restlessness,
Mm-hmm.
but it's an aggressive kind of restlessness.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you this, I've seen some remarkable changes in people's lives once you get past the symptomological aspects of the humanness of the mental illness to the demon that's actually hiding behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what some people in deliverance don't want to do. Oh, it's autism, you got a demon. Oh, it's schizophrenia, you got a demon. Oh, you're manic depressive, you got a demon. Well, you might, but if you don't go through those processes of healing, you're going to damage that person, drive the demon down deeper, and make
Wow.
it less likely they'll get real help.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
huge.
That's huge.
What are
What are
what is
what is
dissociative
this?
identity, and how common is dissociative identity, and how to help somebody who has it in the ministry of deliverance?
Dissociative identity disorder simply means, as they used to say in the popular vernacular, a multiple personality. It's not schizophrenia. It's not a split personality. It's not Jekyll and Hyde, which are the common misconceptions. So the person isn't split into two different people. They simply have a part of the mind that forms another identity. And almost always that is connected to trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say that probably 30 to 40% of the people that I work with who have incurable problems, they've been to all kinds of deliverance ministers and they're no better. It's because no one diagnosed the fact that they had other identities in their mind. So when somebody has a problem, and let's say they're a Christian, and they just, no matter what, I mean, they try all the disciplines, they fast, they pray, they read the Bible, they go through inner healing, et cetera, et cetera. And there's still a part of them doing something aberrational, oppositional to their faith. Where's that coming from? Well, sometimes it's not coming from a demon. So let's use a case in point. Let's say that Susie was sexually abused as a child. Let's say she was incested, very common. And this happened when she was young. She's never told anybody. She doesn't know how to process this. She lives in this private terror of what her father has done to her. How can she survive without a complete mental collapse? Well, people who can't dissociate develop psychosis and mental illness and states of unreality. That's how they deal with it. Or they use alcohol or drugs or sex or something to numb it. But for some people, particularly if they're a Christian and they're in a situation where it's supposed to be Christian, they split off a part of them that is the person who experienced the trauma. So all the pain, all the shame, all the emotions of the trauma are locked up in not Susie, but Mary. And they'll give this person a name. And so what you have to do is as you work with this person, I watch them. I ask friends, do they ever act in a regressive way, like like they're a child at times? I've had husbands say to me, my wife's got the biggest teddy bear collection on the planet. I say, bingo. She just loves to cuddle her teddy bears. Okay, what's that all about? How many people do that? They don't. So if she's doing that, she's regressing. She's regressing, and when she feels safe, the child comes out. So basically, as we describe it in our school, there's a process by which you learn to spot this. And if you see it, even if you're not well versed in it, just ask the Holy Spirit to lead you to say, is there anybody inside of Susie who has a secret, something you'd like to tell me? I just had a lady in my office a couple of days ago, and very same thing. And she just broke down weeping, crying, and kind of huddled up like a little child. And then I just very gently said, what is your name? Who are you? She began to speak in a very childlike manner and describe sexual abuse she'd experienced. And I said, have you told anybody? No, I can't tell anybody. I'm protecting the big lady. I'm keeping her safe by not letting her know. And oftentimes the person who has an altered state of mind does not have the memory. Somebody else has the memory. But the key is, as they receive healing, the memory starts coming back in a very healthy way. And there are people in inner healing that know how to do this. Unfortunately, some of the people in inner healing that know how to do this don't also cast out demons. So, because almost always there's going to be a demon attached to that alter state because it's stuck in anger and shame and trauma.
So good. That's so good. And I think it's very important for everybody that's watching and rewatching this video also to understand that, concerning medicine, and you advised me one time when I asked you, when somebody comes to you and they are taking medication, for example, against depression, or they're taking medication prescribed by their doctor or their therapist, and you don't encourage people after they get delivered to get off of medicine and pretty much declare
No.
themselves as healed. What is your process?
Well, my process is if you're genuinely healed in body or mind, the proof of that is eventually going to come out,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to be able to function. But you don't want to come off of medication quickly. Now you got another problem
Mm-hmm.
because medications have side effects, and you can send somebody into a psychotic state. You can really permanently damage that person. Uh, because of what's going to happen to their body that's become dependent on that drug and doesn't have it anymore. That's a physical thing, not a spiritual thing. So when I say to them, look, you go back to your doctor, you go to your clinician, you tell them you believe that the Lord has done a healing with you, but you would like to work with them to
Mm-hmm.
gradually get off the medication and to be monitored through that process.
Mm-hmm.
That brings glory to God. But doctors have horror stories they can tell you of people who claim they were healed of this, claim they were healed of that, and they end up worse later.
That's so good. That's so good. I think that's such a wise advice to everybody. I was reading a comment of when you were speaking about the mental illnesses, and one person, and I'm not going to mention her name, but she says, I no longer take my autistic son to church. They always come our way and start trying to cast something out of him, and his behavior gets more erratic. I pulled him out quickly and left. And I've seen this actually happen with, especially in Pentecostal churches, charismatic churches, people super zealous. They see, a child. I remember one time we had a person, she had a brain tumor. So because the tumor was lodged in the brain, so she would have seizures, and everybody went casting out demons, and we had to stop and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. Did anybody even ask what's happening to her? She has a seizure. She doesn't have a demon. Not that demons cannot cause seizures, but I like how you pointed out. We have to ask questions first. We can't jump in and treat everything as a demon and use this deliverance as a hammer and everything is a nail. We have to interview. Like even Jesus, that boy that was having epileptic seizures, Jesus didn't go cast out demons. He started to ask the Father a question. How long did this happen? How did this start? And so interviewing the family, interviewing the people, and instead of just jumping into that, what would you say about the people or churches who are constantly just going at it right away? Any autistic children, anybody who's having seizures, and they're saying this is demonic, we just go hard after it. What would you tell them?
Well, they mean well in most cases. They're just not educated in areas of mental health and in areas of physical health. And God works through many different ways to bring healing to the mind and body. And we need all these disciplines to cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
So the doctor's not your enemy. The psychiatrist may not be your enemy. The devil may be your enemy, but all these people, unless they are, unless your psychiatrist, and this does happen, says, I want you to go to Tibet and, meditate with the Dalai Lama, then you might want to reconsider what the guy said.
Mm-hmm.
But approach it very carefully. Educate yourself. We have something today that's really marvelous. It's called the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Google the condition. Start reading some of the health sites about what they say about that condition. They're marvelous places that you can look and glean information rather than some preacher who stands up and says every child that's autistic, and I saw a guy do this recently on the internet, that this is a demon. If your child's autistic, you got a demon. What a horrible burden that puts upon this parent. I mean, it's awful. Because now, if their child's not better, they don't have enough faith.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trusting God enough. And that's a guilt trip that is just a horrible thing to put on people.
What would you tell parents that have children with mental illnesses? How to walk that process of healing, deliverance? What encouragement would you give them?
Got to adjust my camera here.
Uh-huh.
Got a little out of adjustment.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, the first thing is, have you sought medical advice? Have you got an opinion on this condition? Have you spoken with a clinician about this? Have you seen what they have to say? Doesn't mean you have to accept what they say, but you at least need to listen to what they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, Pastor Vlad, the majority of people who come to me with cases like this have not taken them to any type of doctor. They're anti-doctor, so they don't want to talk to a doctor. Well, okay, but they're trained. I mean, but as you know, my oldest daughter is about to finish medical school and go into the medical profession, and those people know a lot of stuff. They don't have all the answers. They're not God, but they can be of assistance. So let's go through the proper channels here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, talk to the doctor. The doctor may recommend a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a social worker or a clinician of some kind. See what these people have to say observationally about the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
The cause is another matter. The cause may or may not be something that's spiritual, but let's see what the symptoms say. Are these common symptoms of someone at this age doing this under these circumstances? Does it fit a predetermined template that a clinician has seen over and over again?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean that you're devoid of praying it away, fasting it away, seeking the Lord to mitigate it. It just means let's find out what you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes there is a demon behind it. But you have to expose that demon by stripping away the layers that hide him, the symptomological layers of behavior that allow the demon to hide. And then he's forced out into the open. Now, I remember one time I had a man come to me and he brought his son.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, my son is autistic and he has demons. So, I'm thinking very skeptically here.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what do you do for a living, sir? And he said, I'm a pediatrician. He said, look, I have analyzed this from a medical standpoint, every which direction. And I said, well, if that's the case, I'm going to talk to the demons. And a couple of minutes later, I was talking to this little boy's demons. The father had actually gone through my school and was learning how to cast demons out of his son. But there was a medical opinion there.
Mm-hmm.
He had eliminated all the other possibilities. Christians have to stop this. We call it mystical thinking, magical thinking that we're going to skip over the medical profession. We're going to skip over the psychiatric profession. We don't need any of that, or worse yet, it's of the devil. We're just going to jump over here and get rid of the devil. The person's going to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they have dissociative identity disorder and they have an alter state that's trying to protect that person because they've been abused. Guess what? You are the new abuser. You mean well.
Wow.
But now this person is going to hide even deeper down inside, and you may never be able to help them.
Wow. Okay, that hits straight. This has been huge for us in the ministry of Deliverance, and we actually started to even work with local therapists and local counselors with anybody who gets delivered and who had trauma, who had abuse, after we've taken them through the inner healing, because we're not counselors. I'm not a, professional counselor. And a lot of times what pastors do, they think, well, we know 3 verses, Psalm 23, here's, we're just going to take them through that. That's enough. Apostles did not have those degrees, so we don't need to have, any of that knowledge. But apostles also did not drive a car. So apostles did not do a lot of other things that we all benefit from. Now, we don't have to do those things. We can all ride horses, yet we take advantage of the technology, the advancement of our world. We benefit from that to make our life easier. But when it comes to mental health, when it comes to physical health, like nobody would take that approach toward their physical health. Everybody will go to the doctor. And I think that especially in the Pentecostals and charismatic circles, this anti-doctor or anti-medicine movement, and I even had to correct it in our own church. One time a person gets up and shares their healing testimony, and they're bashing the doctor. The doctor said this, because the doctor gave them diagnosis. And I said, I rebuke you, devil. And I pulled them back and I said, listen, the doctor was not the devil. He didn't mean you harm. He went to 12 years or 14 years of training to help you. I'm like, he's not doing this. He wants to kill you. He wants to help you. Why in the world are you attacking the doctor in your testimony? You actually went to the doctor. You're going to go still to the doctor if something bad happens. You're not going to go to me. You're going to go to him. If you get, heart attack, you're not going to call your pastor. You're going to call the emergency. So I'm like, why are you criticizing and bashing the doctor who does not have you, who doesn't see you as an enemy? And I feel like Christians have this, especially the passionate, young, charismatic, and they mean well. They want to glorify God, but you don't have to spit on everything that God is using currently in order to give God the glory. God still gets glorified because he blesses those doctors. And so I think we have to add the inner healing component, the work of medicine, the work of therapist and counseling, especially in the area where things are not dealing with demons, or we don't have experience in those areas. Instead of coming in and thinking that we're all pros and we know what we're doing, there are things where sometimes we have no idea what we're doing, and we have to acknowledge that and say, hey, I can deal with the demon, but when it comes to this, I know a little bit and I can help you to begin, but after that I have to recommend you to a professional who will see you. And as a church, a local church here at Hungry Gen, we actually pay for our members for them to go to see those doctors. We actually underwrite the cost, because some people say, well, I can't because I can't afford it. So we remove that excuse. The moment people went through deliverance and they still have, or they have had the past hurt, and so that is one of our way we serve the members, is we pay for those. We have few local therapists and counselors who provide that service, and we work with them closely. And so I just really want to say thank you, Dr. Bob Larson, because you really kind of helped us to understand that. And it grieves my heart seeing Deliverance ministry that gets all fired up, and they hurt, like what you said, they actually hurt people more, not understanding. They're not doing it intentionally, but they're hurting people more, not understanding that.